trading, trading, trading. We'll talk about the strategy of trading, the philosophy of trading, how to present offers to other teams, when to trade versus utilize the waiver wire. Well, you get the idea. Master of trading Fred Zinkie of Yahoo Sports joins us on the show to talk trading and more, coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruven Guy. How are you, Ruven?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Softball continues for me. We're just telling everybody off air before the show that just going so great. I'm 18-4 on the year. The team is really rolling and hitting, so it's a lot of fun. It's been a really fun summer so far. How are you, Ruven?
I'm doing great. I'm loving the All-Star picks. I love the discussions that go along with the All-Star picks that are like this. And by the way, do you have an All-Star game in your softball league? Are you picked to pitch? Are you the starting pitcher for the All-Star game?
Yeah, so we had one in the spring Sunday league, and yes, I was picked. I was the starting pitcher, and that was good. I pitched just a couple of innings. We lost the game. We just had terrible defense that game. We played at a crappy ball field that day, and a couple of guys missing, so they're playing out of position. But whatever. It's not official yet, but I was told that I won the Cy Young for the spring.
Okay, but you're not going to be snubbed for the All-Star game.
No. Unlike some of our Mets, Lindor and Nimmo, I mean, they should make the team. They've been great this year.
Well, the reason why Alonso made it because he said he would do that only if he would do the home run derby only if he was elected as an All-Star, which is why he was made an All-Star. And I think that if you watch the way Nimmo's been playing recently and the way Lindor's been playing, they both deserve to be All-Stars, and maybe they still will be. You never know.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a fantastic episode tonight. We're going to talk a lot about philosophy and a lot about strategy. We're going to talk about trading, and there is no one we would rather have on than our following guest from Yahoo Sports, who's a fantastic trader and fantastic analyst as it is. Fred Zinkie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here. And yeah, we had a good softball discussion off air. I learned a lot more about your league. It's pretty cool. It sounds pretty awesome.
Oh, absolutely, indeed. But we'll stick to fantasy baseball right now, and we're going to talk about trading. So, want to get just very general sense from you on the general trading philosophy. And let me just start by saying that when you're trading with other teams, trading should generally be good of both teams. And I'm an actuary, and I think of doing well in fantasy baseball and winning in terms of probabilistic. There's a probability associated with the way your team is currently constructed and the stats you've accumulated so far. There's a probability of winning the league, probability of finishing in the money, and so on and so forth. The future is unknown, right? You have what you've accumulated. There's an expectation of players, variance around it, but you can come up with, either in your head or with some mathematics, some probability of winning. And when you add a piece, that's going to change that probability. And the idea of trading for you is to increase that probability. If you do it right with the right trading partner, you're going to increase your chances of winning and increase your trading partner's probability of winning. And if it's done right, you're mutually beneficial, obviously to the detriment of everybody else, right? It's good that you both are trading. Well, you need this category, you've got a surplus, that guy needs a category. So you both increase your chances by trading. So whenever I'm evaluating a trade or I'm thinking of how to do a trade or what to trade for, it's always from the probabilistic mindset of how can I illustrate to the other team that they're going to have a higher probability of winning if we do the trade, and of course, I'm going to have that kind of probability as well. What is your general trading philosophy, Fred?
Yeah, as you said, I think both teams should get in their minds, what they want out of the trade. They should get something that they want out of the trade. So now what makes this game so interesting is that we all have different valuations for players. If I asked Ruven to list, say, the top 10 fantasy shortstops for the rest of the season, and I did it as well, we'd have 3 different lists. So, we'd all have certain players, Bobby Witt or Gunnar Henderson, near the top. It's certain players we wouldn't even consider, but we'd have different lists. So what's great about this game, what makes it really fun, is that we value players differently. We see through different lenses the same player. And because of that, that's what really, to me, greases the wheels on the trade market, is we have different viewpoints on the same player. So that means, if you value someone on my team more than I value them, then logically they should probably be on your team, right? And vice versa. If I do at this moment in time, maybe they should be on my team. So I think a good trade is something where both managers are getting what they want out of the trade. And then will everybody around them agree that it's an even trade or that it enhances both of their chances of winning? Who knows? Because we don't all agree. That's what makes sports fun. That's why we don't do fantasy drafts at the end of the season. That's why we do them at the beginning of the season and do all these things during the season, right? Because we're trying to predict what's going to happen. So that's what greases the wheels on the trade market, is that we're all constantly changing our opinions on player valuation for every player in baseball. And because of that, there's always trading possibilities out there.
Yeah, but there's different reasons for trading too. Like that, I guess one of the arguments you're making is that we all have different valuations of players, so we might as well swap valuations where we think one is higher than the other. But of course, there's other trading reasons, such as, I've got a surplus of shortstops, you've got a surplus of starting pitchers. I'm not even playing this guy, you're not playing this guy. Why don't we just balance each other out? Or categorically, right? There's different ways to make you better, other than just a valuation difference.
Well, it's also about filling a need. I mean, you have to look at your team and you have to say, okay, you know what? I need this category, or I need this player. I have an injured player, and sometimes one team needs a spot to fill for an injured player, and you need a certain category. So sometimes you can find a trading partner just like that. Also, that's easy to do. You just look at the players' rosters, look at their injured list, see how many people are out, look who they're playing in certain positions, and you can say, oh wait, I can maybe send this guy, and they can fill a need because I can take that guy because, wait, they're higher in the standings in one category. So it's, for trading, it's really filling a need, whether it's categorically or if you need an able and healthy body.
So one big question I have for you, Fred, and this is really a crux of when to know when to trade, is because there's different ways to improve your roster. You can go to the waiver wire and pick up a player and drop a player, and that will improve your roster, or theoretically could improve your roster somehow. Or you can get a quantity from a trading partner. You have to give up something to get something. How do you know when you really need to resort to the trading market to accomplish your goal, to get where you need to be? Because they have to give up something for that. For the waiver wire, you don't have to give up as much. How do you know when to look at the waiver wire to fill your needs versus trading?
So I don't usually trade for need until later in the season, like now-ish, going forward. Mostly I trade for my perceived value, and that's where I say that, like, you and I and everyone else, we may not have value the players the same. So I try to trade for what I perceive as value up until probably around now, like somewhere in early July, and then I'll trade for need. So you're right. So I will largely use the waiver wire to fill like an immediate need, like, oh my goodness, my third baseman's hurt, I need a third baseman. Like unless we're in an AL only or something, but in a mixed league, I'm gonna just try to fill that on the waiver wire and grind that out until I find someone. And then I'll be constantly looking to trade for, like I said, like for where I feel like I could get good value, shuffle my roster in a way that I think makes it better overall. This time of year, then maybe I would start to look and be like, you know what, I've been trying to fill this third base hole for like a month and it's just not happening. Maybe I need to get out there and trade for it. But I'll be stubborn if it's like a temporary hole, especially, and try to use the waiver wire to fix it.
Moving?
Well, historically, you can know which categories you can fill on the waiver wire. Like, you'll know you got to get a speedster, hopefully, in sometime in September, get some stolen bases. A lot of relievers go down. You can get a possible closer on the waiver wire. But there's some things you cannot get on the waiver wire. There are no 20 home run hitters on the waiver wire. You're not going to get that. So I think that's what you're looking for when you're trying to make a trade. If you think you need something in the category where you can possibly still fill on the waiver wire, whether it's, managing your ERA with a middle reliever or looking to vulture wins from getting a 2-star pitcher, that you can get on the waiver wire. You don't necessarily need to make a trade for that. But if you're looking for a guy in the category, let's say you need batting average, like you want to trade for looser eyes or something like that, or you're looking for a power guy, you're not going to get those guys on the waiver wire. They just don't exist.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, there's two things. One is uniqueness of profile, is that on the waiver wire does not exist a certain unique type guy. Right? A guy who has 30 home runs, 30 home run power, just doesn't exist. Somebody who has 40 stolen base ability just doesn't exist. Somebody who has 180 strikeout ability, K strikeout ability, just doesn't exist. And there's no way if your roster requires that kind of impact, and it's not just a marginal gain in a category. You know what? I could use a touch more homers. You know what? I could use a touch more steals. If it's not that kind of marginal ability and it really requires uniqueness of profile, you have to. The other thing I'd say is more than the have to, it's the can, and that's really trading from a surplus. If you see on your team you've got an excess save guy, you've got 4 saves guys, that's something that you probably don't want to play well 4 guys. Maybe you want to hold somebody for in case of emergency in terms of injury, but you're not going to want to play all 4 guys. You're going to want to play 3 guys. So why are you holding on to the surplus? You can fill another need from that. It could be categorical. It could also be position. I've got really 4 excellent shortstops. Well, I can't play all of them. I'll play the best one each week schedule-wise, but when you have an opportunity to trade from a surplus, you're going to do that. Like, I'll give you an example, and we're in an NFBC league, and you can't trade an NFBC, but it's a perfect opportunity of when I would. Ruven and I in an NFBC auction, and by the way, we're in first place in both of our NFBC auctions this year. We've got Luis Arias.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
No jinx. We've got Luis Arias. We're ahead in batting average by a considerable amount currently. Playing Luis Arias most weeks doesn't actually help us. Doesn't contribute anywhere else. We've got such a big jump, and there are other categories and players that just are better in certain weeks. I find that we're playing Luis Arias like less than 1 out of 3 times. I would love, because we have that surplus, I would love to have been able to trade him and get a pitcher or get somebody that we can use in a certain spot that would make our roster. I wouldn't sit that guy, but I'm sitting Luis Arias. But Luis Arias is way above replacement. Of course you'd want to play him. Not on our specific team, but on somebody else's team. So that's when you'd want to trade versus looking at the waiver wire. Anything to add, Fred?
Yeah, so I think that's a great example. So I almost view like the league, like all the teams, as almost like a web, and like your team's in a spot and there's lines coming off your spot, and I'm seeing if any of those lines connect with my team. And like, so when I was doing, if I'm on my game in your league, and let's just convert this NFBC league to a trading league, if I'm on my game in your league, like I'm noticing that you're out in front in batting average, and then I'm looking at your roster and I'm like, okay, where are the emptiest batting averages on this roster? Luis Arias is obviously the poster child for an empty batting average, right? He contributes a bit in other areas, but generally an empty batting average. So then I'm going to go to you and I'm going to say, hey, Luis Arias isn't really doing anything for you. And then obviously then the second part of this trade is I need to look at the standings and I need to determine like, okay, you guys are within 5 steals of 3 teams or something like that. Okay, if I could get Luis Arias from you, give you someone that steals some bases, better than anyone you could find on the waiver wire for sure, then we can make a good deal. And then hopefully I come away with what I feel like is good value for my team, because I'm really helping you balance your roster. So, because maybe the batting average isn't a huge area need for me, but I'll take it. But maybe I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you player X for Luis Arias. In my opinion, Luis Arias overall is more valuable than player X, but not by a massive amount, but to me by a little bit, incremental gains. And then you get something that could move you up maybe 3 or 4 points in the standings, like right here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. You're happy. I get Arias. I'm happy. In theory, and what I have done in the past in Ted Wars, I'm not in a trading league right now. What I have done in the past is you make like 15 or 20 of those trades in a year, and all of a sudden little $1 or $2 value increases, you know what I mean? And you've increased the overall value of your team a lot. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to do that. But the Arias point is like a great example where you may, like, you obviously want to get the best value you can for Arias, but like if you can get something that's somewhat fair and then really helps you categorically, especially this time of year, like you definitely, like what you described, you're not even using them half the time or more.
Yeah. You don't have to get it. Like, if you think he's a $10 player, you don't have to get an $11 or $12 player. You could get an $8 player or
Right.
$7 player, because the probability, again, it goes back to thinking of probability. The probability of you winning increases even though you're going down in an expected value, but it's in the categories that help you more. So probabilistically, it'll help your team more, and it'll get you more points in the long run, right? I was going to ask you, Fred, about the difference between trading early in the league versus the middle. You've sort of answered that because you're in the beginning really looking for value and trying to pit what somebody else's expectations of a player against yours. My question though to you is, how do you do that in today's environment? Like I think about 10 years ago, and projections were less prevalent. People had very different opinions. People went by rankings, and people had differences of opinion. Nowadays, so many more people who play this game really well are looking at projections. I mean, not to say that everybody uses ATC, but I know a lot of NFBC players, whether they use it, they're checking ATC, they're checking the BAT, they're checking Steamer. Everyone knows what people's expectations are in terms of projections. And yes, there's differences of opinion, but it's so much less pronounced today. My question is, how do you still extract in today's day and age with so many projections these kinds of value differences?
Right. So I think you have to know, well, as best you can, you want to know the other managers in your league, and you want to know which managers work heavily off projections. And for those managers, you can probably almost look at, like you said, you can look at ATC values, the BAT, etc., projections, and be like, oh, okay, this would probably be appealing to this manager because, but as per the projections on Fangraphs, like it looks like they're getting the better player. But maybe I don't agree. Maybe I see something in there where I'm like, okay, I think maybe the projection systems have missed something. I think situations are going to change. We've got a trade deadline coming up. We've got some teams that are going to be pushing hard for playoffs. We've got some teams that are going to go into the tank and start looking towards next year. So I'm going to say like, oh, really? The projection systems like this guy more than my guy? They like this guy less than my guy? Okay, well, a projections-based manager would probably be okay with that trade. But then there's going to be other people in your league who more shoot from the hip, who aren't projections people quite so much, or don't necessarily check Fangraphs. They more go by feel. And then with those people, I don't know, maybe I look at the projections a little more and say, okay, well, or maybe I just don't even concern myself with that. But I think that's where you need to know the other managers in your league. You're right that like knowing you, for example, that you're deep into projections and evaluation system. It probably wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to offer something that looks lopsided by the projection systems. So I'm going to probably maybe start by, okay, I've got this idea. Let's go back to Luis Arias. I've got this idea. Okay, now I'll look at what I'm offering you, and does it look reasonable on the projection systems? Because if it doesn't look reasonable, it's probably a no-go with you. Maybe a different manager who kind of doesn't use that as much, maybe they take a hard look at it, but you might not because of the way you value players.
Yeah, sure. You got to look at what your other. You always have to know what is important to the other manager, and that's really the key.
But there are other managers who still they don't look at the rest of season values, and they're still looking at the preseason valuations, and they're still going by that, and have that stuck in the back of their head. And they won't make a certain trade because they're saying, "Why would I do this? His value is that," and then you have to say, "No, it's the season's going on. You can't go by preseason valuations anymore. You can't do that." And other people get hung up on players' names, like just because you trade a high-profile name, they may be of equal value to the person you're getting if you look and you do the deep dive and you see, okay, this team needs this stat, this team needs this stat, and it's sometimes it's hard to work with people just because of the different valuations, because some look at the rest of the season stuff, some look at the preseason stuff, some have different just preformed conceptions of the players already in their mind. It's hard to sometimes make a deal.
Yeah, no, it's. I just find it much harder these days. Scott White, who had the FSWA Baseball Article of the Year, wrote about that today. Trading is so much different. It's just much harder. Everyone has preconceived notions, and I'll tell you, in home leagues, I just find there's less trades. Not just with me, with everybody, less trades overall, because now there's valuations out there. This system says this guy's $10. This guy's system says it's $5. No way, you're ripping me off, and people don't want to be wrong. 10 years ago, you went by your own ranking, somebody else's ranking, you give it a thought, and that's it. So it's a little bit different kind of trade environment. Want to ask you, Fred, about how does your current league standing matter in how you trade and what you look for? Because, obviously a better bargain and a better player is better, but do you look to trade for different things, whether you're in first place or whether you're in last place and trying to catch up?
Yeah, I'm gonna either way. I'm gonna keep trying to trade. So, for example, even if I had a first place team, I wouldn't sit back and almost be like afraid to mess with it. I might if I was in real baseball and be like, "Hey, don't touch the clubhouse." But this is rolling. But in fantasy baseball, I don't feel that. So I'm gonna trade either way. But you're right. For example, if my team was farther down the standings, I may take some risks. So I may be more likely to trade for some boomer bust guys. I can give you an example. When he came back, if I was halfway down my standings, maybe I would have made a real pitch to trade for Royce Lewis. Because when Royce Lewis plays, he's awesome. He just doesn't play that much. So maybe if I'm sitting in sixth place or something, I would say, you know what? I'll pay up for Royce Lewis. He's back. I'm going to take my chances that he'll play for the rest of the year, which obviously didn't happen. If I was in first place and I got Royce Lewis back, maybe I would have said, maybe I give Royce Lewis 3 good weeks here so he's really rolling, and then I'll try to move him just for someone who doesn't have such a terrible injury profile. So that so I'd say the further down the standing, probably the more I would embrace risk in a trade.
Oh, 100%, wholeheartedly. I agree. I agree with that. And that's what you're looking for. And I always bring the point of the 2-for-1 trades. I've noticed that when you try to trade, everyone wants the best player in the deal. I have a hard time saying, I've got 2 guys, I'll trade these 2, you give me your superstar. Nobody wants to do that. They want to do the opposite. Okay, I'll give you Ellie De La Cruz at the top. You give me this guy and this guy. People have a much easier time accepting, taking the superstar off my hands and trading the 2. So if I'm in first place, second place, and I'm at the top, and I want to de-risk, I'm good with taking 2 players and giving away the superstar. I'll take an aggregate, the same total value, or even less even, just to keep away the risk of just the one player going bust or the one player underperforming or the one player who was just, way overperforming over their heads, and you never know. I'd rather take a chance on spreading the risk there. And theoretically, it's the opposite at the bottom. I just find it harder to trade that way as a 2-for-1 guy.
And Fred, I love your point about being in first place or in the top and not being complacent, because complacency breeds contempt. It's not a good thing. Last year, when me and I were in a league, we're in a GDD league. I was in second place. I didn't make any trade. I think I made one minor trade, but a team below me made a very risky trade and ended up jumping me in the standings. Currently, I'm in first place in the same league, in the league with Ariel right now, and I am putting trade out offers out there. I am not staying content because injuries happen, things happen. You have to be prepared for stuff that's going on down the road. The trade deadline's going to come. Players are going to get traded. They're going to change leagues, going to change roles and everything like that. You can't stand pat if you're in first or second place. But if you're in the middle of the pack, there's no reason why to get some risk. Lower pack, there's no reason why to get a ton of risk unless you're in a keeper league and you want to trade for keepers. Different story. But otherwise, you cannot stay complacent. Even if you don't think you necessarily need a trade, put feelers out there anyway. If you want a player, ask a team. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst thing that'll happen is that they'll say no.
That's it. That's the point. So one of my biggest fears, let's say even if I wasn't first, and you just explained it, we've all been there where a trade in your league comes through your email and you look at it and you're like, what? He got that for that? Really? And then my next thought is, I could have done that. I could have got that for something like that. And your biggest fear is you're in first and the guy in second or third pulls that off. And you're sitting there just working away on your computer, maybe you're at work or something like that. And you're like, oh no, now the guy in second or third might catch me. Oh my God, he just made a huge, amazing trade. How was I not in on that? And the answer is you didn't know. You weren't out there. You weren't putting names out there. You weren't asking people. So this other guy, good for him. He put a name to someone, or I'll assume everyone was dealing in good faith. He put a name out there or got in touch with an owner and said, hey, I'd really like to get this player. What about this player and this player, whatever. And you weren't in on it. And if you were more active, you would have been the one making the trade that everyone opened their email and thought, wow, what a great trade. So I live in fear of that happening, and that's why I try to stay active.
And back to the probabilistic view of this, if you're not making trades and somebody else is doing, well, they're getting better and you're not. So that's actually decreasing your probability of winning. By you not making these trades and not staying in line, in step with all the other guys who are doing it, you're decreasing your chances to win. So you have to get there. It's a good segue to the next question, which is about keeper leagues. And in keeper leagues, it's almost a guaranteed thing that there's going to be trades, right? Because teams that are out of it, they're going to say, well, I can't win this year, so I better unload my stars and get something for next year. Of course, that means that put pressure on you, a top team, to, even though you might not want to, you might have to trade one of the guys you would keep next year to stay in line and to stay in pace with all the teams who are going to trade. So my question to you is, how do you do trades in a keeper league? How do you know what's enough value? Like, if you're, you're trying to win and you want to acquire a superstar, the guy's unloading, how much value do you have to give up? How much keeper value? And same thing at the bottom, or the flip side at the bottom. How do you know what's enough to get for trading your superstars?
That's right. I think in keeper leagues, it's much easier to get confused, and it's much easier to get paralyzed. Where you're just like, oh, I don't know. Like, this is better for.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, this is better for down the road, but it's not. It, like you said, the 1 year leagues, the trading can be pretty straightforward. As you said, it could be as simple as look at a projection system. How does this look? Look at my standings. How's this look? It doesn't take that much necessarily creativity. The keeper leagues takes a lot. So I think you definitely have to pick a lane. Like, are you in this year or are you out? And then after that, like, it's even more important for those leagues to go shopping. Like, maybe you need to start, maybe in those leagues a little more than in a 1 year league. I'm going to start on the high end a little bit when I make offers because I don't want to sell my players short. And you come back to me and you're like, Fred, I'm not giving you this guy for this guy, but like, and then I might say, well, okay, well, how about this guy then? And you're like, oh, okay, well, that sounds a little more reasonable. But because maybe you're worried more because there's going to be bigger swings in a keeper league there's already swings. I started us off by saying that, like in how we value players. The swings will be even bigger when some of us are thinking to this year and some of us are thinking, to next year. And then some of us are thinking to like 3 years down the road, right? So that's going to really change even prospects. Like, there are certain keeper league owners are going to be like, hey, I really want this prospect because I think he'll be good like really soon. And I'm not contending this year, but I'm close. I think I'm close next year. And then there's other people who are like, I don't even want that guy. I want to go further down the road.
But if you're out of it, you also don't want to get stuck with the players that are tradable. That's the problem. So you got to start asking for trades early on, because if you're out of it, you want to try to stockpile as many keepers as possible. That's your goal, because you're not in it. You tried, you're out of it, but you're playing for next year or the year after. If you have guys that you can say, you know what, he's not in my 1 year or 2 year plan, let me see if I can get someone who's in a 1 year or 2 year plan. And it's a very fine balance. Like, me and Ariel are in a league together. We're in a keeper league, and we're on the cusp of possibly being in the money, but we're also in mode of, this is supposed to be a transition year where we're trying to stockpile keepers. So now we're trying to figure out whether or not we want to trade a possible keeper to go for it this year to get in the money.
It's the worst spot, Ruvain.
Yeah, it's horrible, but it's good because it can go either way, and we can still quote unquote luck our way into third place or second place even with what we have. But we also want to plan for next year, and it's just there's such a fine balance of doing that. So a lot of teams are like that. They're like in fourth, fifth, sixth place. Should I go for it this year? Should I not go for this year? You have to look at the construct of your team and whether or not you can able to sustain a run if you make a trade that will help you.
I think the best advice there is that you got to pick a lane, just what Fred said.
Mm-hmm. It's the same as real baseball. It's easy to be the general manager of the Baltimore Orioles right now. You're like, yes, we should be going for it. Our team's awesome. Or the Phillies. It's easy to be the White Sox general manager. You're like, okay, we suck. What can I get for some of these guys at California Road? It's hard to be the general manager of the glob of NL teams and the Cardinals, the Reds, etc. right now.
The Mets.
The Mets. There it is. The Mets might be the most. They've got to be like close to first place for the most polarizing. Like, I'm sure you guys have discussed this at length, off air. But like, what do you do if you're the Mets? Are you in? Like, you could squeak your way into the playoffs, and once you're in, you never know. We've seen this.
Or do you trade Pete Alonso, who's in his walk year, and you could probably get something out of him, but you're not getting his full value because he's not having such a great year, so you don't know exactly what to do, and you're on the fence, and you have a fan base to please. In fantasy baseball, you don't have you are the fan base to please, so you could do whatever you want. So you just have to pick a lane.
Exactly. Knowing David Stearns, he's probably going to do both for some reason. I just have that feeling. But yeah,
trade Alonso and get 3 relievers or something like that.
Right. But I'll tell you, it's about picking the lane, and if you can, as quickly as possible so that you can get ahead of everything, right? And know the story. But sometimes you have to wait. I mean, we've been talking about the keeper league we're in. If you would have asked us a month and a half ago, wow, we're going to sell. Well, obviously, in fact, we were putting out trade offers right away for. We've got Juan Soto who wants him. We've got Freddie Freeman who wants him. We've got Zach Wheeler who wants him. And then we're hanging around third place, which is in the money, and we're like, well, I mean, we're in the money now. We're going to blow this up. Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
At least stay the course, or give it another month. So it's so hard to be in the middle, and it's not an answer to give to you, but to everybody. But yeah, trying to pick it as quickly as you can is the best idea, but it's not always possible because you just might not know.
But look at this. You have to look at the standings. Can you catch the people ahead of you? Is it feasible? Look at the categories. Are the other teams so far ahead, or do you have enough points to gain? Do they have enough points to lose to catch up? That's what you have to look into also.
And you have to keep a pulse on the trade market. So my next question is, and maybe the answer is very different for redraft leagues and keepers, Fred, is that what's the best way to work trades? Should you approach one team directly and work with them and say, you know what, I think we're a good trading partner. Let's figure out a deal and go. Or is it better to, guys, here's my on the block. I'm here shopping Freddie Freeman. Everyone send me their offers, and here we go. Like, which is the best lane? I think for keeper leagues, it's probably the latter, where you're just going to try to get the best offer and get multiple bids, and then you'll go down the road with whoever bites. But maybe for a redraft, it's better and more thoughtful to actually consider the right trading partners and go. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're right that it's different in the keeper leagues. I think you're right. It is good to just put it out there and that's what major league teams do, right? They make it known either directly or through the media that certain players are available, because they want the best offer. I think the worst thing you can do to kill the value of one of your players in a 1 year league is to put that out there and then still have that player on your roster in 2 weeks, because you've sent a message to the rest of the league that no one really came with a very good offer. No one, that player wasn't very valued around the league. Or I guess maybe that your asking price was unreasonable, but probably they're going to think the latter, like that they weren't that valued. So let's say you want to trade Freddie Freeman. My goal would be, I'm sending out 2, 3, 5 concrete offers with Freddie Freeman in them, like to different teams. So I'm not dealing with just one team. I'm not going to tell all the teams necessarily that I'm dealing with other teams, because that feels a little bit like I'm kind of threatening them or whatever. It's not really my style, but so, and it's not really any of their business. If they ask, I'd answer it. But, so I'm going to send out offers to a few teams who maybe could use, and then this is where I got to look, teams that could use a corner infielder, or teams that could use a batting average, or, right, or things like that. So, so I'm going to send out a few offers with Freddie Freeman in them, if that's who I've decided I want to trade. And then the biggest thing for me, I'm going to give them explanation, short. I always say no one wants to read a novel when they open their email to check their fantasy teams. So, notice you could gain some points in batting average and runs scored. Freeman's great in those areas. I'm looking for, some steals and a starting pitcher or something in return for us. So I'm going to send that out, something manageable to read. My other big point, and I think people don't do this enough, is I'm going to offer the other owner as much choice as possible. So my goal here is to move Freeman and to get certain things back. But I might say to you, like, hey, if you're not willing to trade me player X, maybe we could shape a trade around player Y or player Z. Let me know out of the 3 of those players, which one you're most likely to move. So now I've put the ball in your court more, and then that plays more to your valuations of the players. And you might look at it, and I may view all player X, Y, and Z as pretty similar, but you may look and be like, well, I don't think player Z is as valuable as X or Y out of my 3 guys. So, okay, let's start there. I'm going to write Fred back right now and tell him, okay, we'll shape it around player Z. Okay, now we've got the ball rolling, and you've had, some control over the process here.
If you didn't know that Fred was from Canada, you can tell by his use of the letter Z.
The letter Z, yeah, you're right.
Interesting. I want to also ask and talk a bit about lowball offers, because I know that I've been known to give some quote lowball offers. Usually it's a starting point, but see, my strategy, Fred, is similar to that, and I agree on the option. But what I usually do is the negotiating tactic is, I'd be content with player Z, but I'll go and say, give me player X, and let him bargain and say, well, how about player, this player, and then I'd be okay. I could do that, knowing full well that's probably what would have happened originally. And obviously, you want to get as much value as you can, so you don't want to put your best foot forward, and you want to have some room to bargain. Question is, how lowball an offer can you do? Because you certainly don't want to go over the lowball offer of insulting, where they say, oh, "Come on," they don't want to deal with you, and where also, and the other danger you also have is where some owner who's probably not that great accepts these lowball offers, and then the other owners say, "What the heck happened? Ari, you screwed this guy, and now nobody wants to trade for you for years," right? The worst thing you can do actually is not the lowball offer. The worst thing you can do is they accept it, and everybody else despises you because of it, right?
It's true, especially if it depends. And this is kind of random, but if you're your home leagues or things like that, like we play in a lot of leagues where everybody is pretty well regarded. I don't know if they're all evenly regarded, but they're all well regarded. But especially in your home leagues, I've done that before, more in football than baseball, because I don't have a lot of home leagues for baseball up here, but I do for football. And yeah, you don't want to just pick on like the weakling in your league, and they get there and everyone rolls their eyes and is like, oh my gosh, Fred just made a trade with this guy. He doesn't even really know what he's doing. He's just ruined the league. And then there's a lot of bad blood, especially, and you're right, like with the lowball offers, when you send someone a really lowball offer, you could turn them off. And there's situations, like I played in the Tout Wars mixed league for years, and like maybe close to a decade. And like, there's just a little turnover in that league every year. 2 or 3 managers switch in and out. So like, if you spoil relationships, like that can hurt you in a trade, not even this season, but down the road.
Right,
Well,
right.
what I've done this year is I haven't even mentioned names and trades to start with. I approach the person. I'll say, you know what? I don't want to lowball anybody, because lowballing them can insult. They feel like they get insulted, and sometimes just turns them off completely. So I'll say, I'm looking for this category. I see you have an opening here, or you're missing a certain stat here. I have something that can fill up your needs. I have something that you have something that can fill up my needs. What are you willing to, how far are you willing to go? I don't want to name players, but I'll say I have a bunch of corner infielders that I can offload, and I see you need corner infielders, and I need saves. I want to, you have a bunch of closers. I want a save guy. So then I'll say, which one are you willing to part with? And then if they come back with like this absurd name, I'll say, okay, he's one of my cornerstones. You don't want to insult him. He's one of my cornerstones. I really don't want to trade this guy. But what about this guy? And what about a lower level guy? And you work a trade like that. You don't want to offend the person. You want to make sure it's on, because this is all good and fun anyway. You want to, if it's a home league, you don't want to offend them. You don't want to get kicked out of the league for giving low ball offers. It's not a good look. But you can still work with them if you treat them as adults, and work it through and say, you need this, I need this. I think we can work it out. Let's just do it. And usually that works.
The worst thing you can do is tell them, you need this guy. I'm telling you, that's what you need. And where they disagree, and you say, no, you don't know what you're doing. You do need this guy. I'm telling you, that you definitely don't want to get into that.
Yeah, you can't be a salesman for your own player. Your own player should sell itself to the other team. Otherwise, you're not going to make the trade.
Right. Well, we've talked a lot about trades here. I don't know if there's any other topic to discuss, but I do want to ask you one final question, Fred, is why is the General George Washington, Ian Kahn, so good at this? What does he do differently?
I think, I've listened to Ian talk about trading. He does it definitely. Ian uses the phone a lot, and he's good. He's really good at talking. He's a bit of a car salesman, so he can get you on the phone and get you in a conversation, I think, and then work his way to closing the deal. From me up in Canada, I know a lot of Americans don't want me necessarily calling them. That's going to rack up your phone bill. So I work through email. I'm also kind of I'm pretty hands off. I don't really like to bug people, so I'm more likely to just send an email, because that way you can respond to it at your convenience rather than responding to it. I know Ian would be smart about that too. He'd be like, hey, when can I call you today? Or something like that. I'm sure he'd be smart about that. Or he'd call and start by is this a good time? If not, I can call you back later. But he's really good at starting a process. So one thing about Ian is that, and this is where I see eye to eye with him, is he's going to start, we're going to make offers, and we're going to come to an agreement, and we're going to get a deal done. So that's why I might start. I like to make the first offer. I don't like to make the other person. I feel like it's kind of weak if I come to the other person and I'm like, hey, like, I noticed you might like a closer. Why don't you make me an offer for one of my 3 closers? Like, I feel like I initiated this. I should make the first offer and try to get the ball rolling. And again, that's why I try to give them a lot of choice, where I might be like, hey, like, I will part with either of these 2 closers for this hitter on your team, or I'll part with this other closer, of mine who maybe is less valued for one of these 2 hitters. And I give them like some choice that where they can feel like they had some extra control over the process. And I'm not saying feel like I'm trying to dupe them. They do have extra control over the process. And that's where the fact, because sometimes you were talking about Ellie at one point, and you were saying, maybe you ship Ellie, let's call him a $45 player. So maybe you try to ship him off for a couple $23, $24 players. And then maybe you throw in a $1 type player, to make it a 2 for 2. Well, what I would do is I would say to the person, I'll give you Ellie, you'll give me player X and Y, and then I would list my 8 worst players, and be like, and you can have one of them. And then like often they'll look and be like, hey, I see something in this one of these. Like, I'm naming a bunch of $1 and $2 guys, and they'll be like, yeah, this one though, now, I think there's potential in this one. That pitcher's had a couple good starts in a row. I think they're going somewhere. So I like to give them those kinds of choices. And sometimes I have given people the choice of literally 7 or 8 guys at the bottom of my roster and been like, hey, to round out the trade, pick one of those players who you feel like is like a good step up from anything you could get on the waiver wire, and they're yours to finish this thing off.
Yeah, I think Ian has a very good pulse on the market. I think he, first of all, gets out in front. And goes in front of the market, and to me that actually does it. But he also has a good pulse. He knows, especially for he plays a lot of keeper dynasty leagues where he knows the timing of when a player is at his maximum value and a player is at his minimum value, and the timing of when his team wants to win and not. So I think he has a good pulse on that, and is really what does it for him.
Well, when you're talking about trading a player with Ian, he's usually in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a question I just thought of just now. Are you willing to trade with a team that's in the first, second, or third, or fourth position and maybe help them and hurt you a little bit? Or are you looking for someone lower down in the standings to trade? Or if you vice versa, do you want to trade with someone there because maybe it'll help you jump them? It's a question that's I've always thought about, and I usually don't look at the players who are right below me because I usually don't want to trade with those guys because I don't want to help them because I don't want them to catch me. So it's a push and pull. And you don't know exactly what to do.
Yeah, although if you make a really good trade with the person 1 or 2 spots behind you, it could sink them a little bit, right? I don't know. It would depend what the kind of trade is for sure. Let's take Bo Bichette right now. There's massive gaps in. There's people who would expect Bo Bichette's going to eventually come around. He entered the season as a career, whatever, 290-something hitter. He's going to eventually come around. And then there are other people who would be like, hey, I'm not going anywhere near this guy for the rest of the season. He's got some little nagging injuries. He's been terrible, whatever. That's the type of player. Maybe you have Bichette and you're like, you know what? If the guy behind me in the standings wants to take Bichette, by all means, he's all yours because I don't think he's coming around at all. And if I can get something useful from this guy for him, he can have him. And if I'm wrong on Bichette, then so be it. But I think I'm basically sending, I'm sending in something to sink the ship on this guy. So it would be, you're right, maybe you're a little more careful, I would say, with trading with the people who are right around you in the standings.
Well, a lot of great topics we touched on, so great discussion. And let's do a little bit of a waiver wire and pitcher preview. So we talk about who we want to pick up now. As we're heading into the All-Star break, just caution, watch out for your league rules as to when the waiver wire selection is, because there are going to be no games at the front end of next week. And of course, all the rotations, whatever you see listed on your theoretical, here's our starters for next week, that can all change. So it's a very different type of week. Also, you might be in the middle of a week. Some fantasy platforms view next week as one minor week. Some view it as 2 weeks combined with either this week or the following week. So just take a look at your fantasy platform's rules as you head into the waiver wire. All right, let's go to you, Fred, first. Who is somebody that you're thinking of picking up off the waiver wire this week?
Okay, so are there position? Does the position matter? Or what are we talking here?
Anyone that you like. We generally do our starting pitchers in the pitcher preview, but anywhere
anyone but a starting pitcher.
You tell us the depth, because there's gonna be some people, some players who appeal to a more shallow depth, deeper depth, so on and so forth.
So one thing I thought about just the uniqueness of this coming week when you mentioned this in the outline. I think this would be a good week to grab a possible closer in waiting, because there's a good chance you won't have enough starts in that 3-day span from Friday to Sunday to fill your roster. So having an extra reliever, like at least you can throw him in your lineup. It might keep you from having an empty lineup spot. Then after next week ends, so you got the picture in that week. Then there's actually one full week, and then the trade deadline's the Tuesday of the next week. So I can throw out a few names kind of in that regard. So I thought of AJ Puck with the Marlins. Tanner Scott could get traded. I thought of Kevin Ginkel. Now, Paul Sewald came back and got a save last night, but he had blown 3 saves, or had 3 bad outings at least in a row. I think they were all blown saves, but either way, he had 3 bad outings in a row. So Kevin Ginkel, just in that regard. I never know what the Rays are going to do. So maybe grabbing Jason Adam in some leagues could be possible. I don't know if they would trade I feel like I never know what the Rays are going to do. So, but they would do anything. And then the one other one I thought of, although I don't think he'll turn out, but man, if the Jays kept him, Yimi Garcia would come back and be their closer. When he comes back off the IL, would be their closer for the rest of the year. I have a hunch he's going to get back, pitch for the Jays for like a week or two, and then get traded. But I thought that this is a good time. Like I said, if I could grab AJ Puck right now, 11% rostered in Yahoo, I could probably use him in the 3-day week in a weekly league, because I probably can't get enough starters. And then maybe I put him on my bench for 1 week, and now we're right at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I've got a Tanner Scott in a lot of leagues, so
I have him in a couple too.
Yeah, that's somebody. And also Chad Green, he's only 25% owned. He actually currently is the closer.
He
right
is the
now,
closer.
the acting closer. Yep, and he's only 25% owned right now on CBS. So for just the current movement, it's good to have him, and maybe he sticks around a little bit more. So Chad Green is somebody that I pick up. Ruven?
Well, actually, you stole my Kevin Ginkel. I really like the Kevin Ginkel there, because Paul Sewald, ever since he took a picture with Frank the Tank, because Paul Sewald used to be a Met, he blew 3 games in a row, and Ginkel's only 13% owned in CBS. In his last 2 weeks, he's gone 8 innings and allowed basically nothing but 12 strikeouts. He has closed before, and if Sewald can't, if he has 1 good and then 3 bad, 1 good and 3 bad, I don't know what leash the Diamondbacks are going to have with him. So Ginkel may be a guy there. And for deeper leagues, Lawrence Butler of Oakland. If Brent Rooker gets traded from Oakland, the last 2 weeks, Lawrence Butler has batted .258 with 3 homers, 2 stolen bases, 7 RBIs, and he's only 3% owned in CBS. So if Butler is able to find space in the outfield to play more, and he gets more playing time, and the guys get traded from Oakland, which is always a possibility, that's a guy to look for. And also, if you need position eligibility, Donovan Solano is always out there. Last week he batted .333, only 2 RBIs and 3 runs, but he's eligible first, second, third. He's basically eligible anywhere in the infield, and he's only 4% owned in CBS. So those are deeper guys if you need to just fill holes for the immediate future.
I'm going to add a couple of hitters that I think are interesting. Colt Keith, he's only 55% owned on CBS. This is for more shallow leagues. He's heating up. This month he's slashing .382, .447, .853. He's got a .255 WRC plus with 4 homers in his first 9 games of the month. And he's batting in the 2-hole every day, which is amazing for run production. He's eligible at both second and third, which is outstanding. He's owned in almost half the leagues in CBS. So I think even 10 is even a consideration for him. 12 team for sure. Take a look at Colt Keith. Rowdy Tellez getting hot. 4 homers in his 9 games in the month. He's slashing .393, .433, .857 for the month. Not playing every day, but most days. And the days that he's not, he's pinch hitting, so he's getting something. He's 20% owned. So this is deep league play, 15-team league. He's interesting, Rowdy Tellez. And as a catcher, Patrick Bailey, only 40% owned. I think he's very underrated. He's got an 80% contact rate this year, 11% walk rate. He's getting on. This is a good 2-catcher league kind of guy in, let's call it a shallow league, but with 2-catcher format. He's interesting to me. Anyone else, Fred?
On the hitting side, I don't know. I don't play on anything this year on CBS, so I don't know his CBS roster rate, but Brandon Marsh in Yahoo is the most under-rostered hitter, in my opinion. He's only 22%, which I just don't get. Like, he hits, like, when he's playing and when he's not. Like, he plays against every righty, just only some lefties. He's just one of those, like, like jack of all trades, master of none, right? He's hitting 268 going into tonight. He's probably going to finish the year with 16, 17 steals, about 15 home runs. He's in one of the best lineups in baseball. And then another one, when I was really thinking stash related, is Kobe Mayo from the Orioles. Like, there is still a fit right there for the Orioles to bring him up and play him in their infield, because they do kind of have one spot that's weak in the infield right now. So I just feel like I'm not sure what the Orioles... I don't think they're going to trade Kobe Mayo. Like, I'd really be shocked about that. But there could... Like, I don't know what the Orioles are going to do at the deadline, but they need to acquire starting pitching so badly. And they have so much excess of hitting, like, at various levels of their system. So somehow I feel like maybe that log jam... Like, the Orioles are one of those rare teams. They could trade a hitter off their major league roster and bring up someone like Mayo, and maybe their lineup doesn't even get worse, and they get a pitcher out of the whole thing. So Kobe Mayo is someone, just like my AJ Puck kind of thoughts, like my Kevin Ginkel thoughts, like someone you hold for a couple weeks. If he's still in the minors on August 1st, you cut him in the experiment. You tried.
Yep, smart. All right, before we do the pitcher preview, time for this week's Injury Gurus Trivia of the Week.
Well, my trivia is going to be related to my pitcher preview, and let's see if you guys can get this answer. A pitcher this week did something for the first time in that team's history that's never been done before. Who was the pitcher, and what team was it?
I mean, that's very, very open-ended.
This week, but it happened this week.
So it's not Michael Kopech's immaculate inning, because that,
No.
I believe, had been done before in White Sox history, although like a super long time ago.
You're correct. And the hint is that this person is available. He's only owned in 45% of CBS leagues. So
And he
he's
did
only not even 50% owned.
And he
Jose
did
Quintana?
something that's never been done.
Yes, Jose Quintana. He pitched 7 shutout innings in back-to-back starts against the same team. That's never been done in Mets history before. So I thought that was really an interesting fact.
Do you
I've
know
never
how
heard of
I
that.
got that?
How did you get that?
Well, he's the guy I was going to mention, and I looked up that he's 45% owned on CBS.
All right, well, there you go. Well, he's got 71 strikeouts in 96 innings. He's lowered his ERA to 3.91. Just since on June 10th, his ERA was 5.29. It's 3.91 right now. He's a guy that is, like I mentioned, he's available in almost half the leagues, and he may even get traded. There have been rumors that they're going to trade him to a team, possibly the Orioles. I've heard rumors of starting pitcher leaving the Mets, so it's possible to go to a better team to get more strikeouts, not more strikeouts, but more wins in a better situation. And again, he is available in almost 50% of leagues, so that's someone to look for. And the second guy I want to mention is Drew Thorpe. He's going to get pitching time in the major leagues. They brought him up already. In his last 12 and a third innings, he has a 2.19 ERA, a .65 whip with 9 strikeouts. He's a guy to look for. He's had 4 straight quality starts. But again, he pitches for the White Sox, so I have to take that with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah, usually when I'm looking at the pitchers to pick up, I see White Sox and I go, next. Rockies, next. Did you do that, Fred?
With the Rockies, yes. The White Sox mostly. I'd be pretty much there with the Marlins right now too. I know it's a good park, but like their lineup is so bad, and like we talked about Tanner Scott, and like the bullpen could be getting worse. Yeah, I do try to avoid those teams, but I try to limit it. Like I'll at least look at pitchers on the A's, for example. I probably won't pick them up, but I'll at least look at them.
Well, Kyle Freeland, in his last 4 starts, he has a 1.71 ERA.
I sent that to you. I sent that fact to you over the week.
Yeah.
Because you said, I think according to ATC, he's supposed to be the worst rated starting pitcher in baseball.
Him and Patrick Corbin were the most negatively valued pitcher, and up to 4 starts ago, he was. So he's gotten a little bit better. Although he did pitch against Washington, Chicago White Sox, and Kansas City Royals, so it's not like he had the absolutely best lineups to face, but but still. Anybody else to add, Fred, from pitchers?
From pitching, actually I had Quintana on my list too.
Everybody did.
Sean, yeah. So Sean Manaea for the same reason, because the Mets opened the second half against the Marlins, and we don't know really teams' rotations right now, but we can make some educated guesses, and that the Mets may start off the second half with some of their veteran starters in those first 3 games. It's going to be really hard to grab pitchers off the waiver wire in that 3-day sample because most teams are going to roll out their best 3 starters, and then most teams, their best 3 starters are already rostered. But in some leagues, Quintana's available, and in some leagues, Manaya's available. I also thought of Jose Soriano from the A's because they open their first series is against Oakland, and decent chance he could get in that series. So that's at least one of the weaker offenses. But like I said, like it's going to be hard. Like when you start looking at, I looked at certain teams and I'm like, oh, they're playing, the Jays are playing Detroit. Oh, that's a pretty good matchup. Not a great offense. Yeah, but the 3 guys the Jays are going to roll out to start off the second half are all going to be rostered in every league. So it's going to be hard to grab streamers. The Mets, I think, if it depends on the size of your league. Like in a 15-teamer, none of those guys are available anyways. A 15-teamer, you're not getting any of these guys. So, but maybe in some 12s, you can come away with some of those pitchers.
Yeah, and another Met guy to throw in, Kodai Senga's going to be back soon. His ghost fork was, I would say, visible, but maybe was invisible in his rehab stint as he pitched for the Cyclones in Brooklyn the other day. So Kodai Senga, he might be available in your league also. Good stash to have. We have him in 1 or 2 leagues, I think, Ruvain.
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
All right, Ruvain, injury update. What do you got for us going into the break?
Okay, well, we'll start with Tyler Glasnow, who was placed on the IL with lower back tightness. It was retroactive to July 6th. The injury occurred while he was playing catch last Sunday. He's going to miss the All-Star game, but I think that may just be it. He may be ready to start sometime during the first rotation of the Dodgers out of the All-Star break. Matt McLain, here's a guy you haven't heard of in a long time. He's been on the IL since March following left shoulder surgery. Reds manager David Bell said this week that McLain has started swinging a bat and hopes to begin a rehab assignment on August 12th. So if you have room in your roster, you want to stash someone, he could be ready by mid to late August, and he can help you in your team as well. Zach Wheeler left his last start after 5 innings due to lower back tightness. The MRI was negative. That's a good thing. He has dealt with back issues before. It's usually during spring training, and he's expected to start the second half on time. This shouldn't be an issue, but that's something to keep an eye on. Cody Bellinger is placed on the IL with a fractured left middle finger. The Cubs didn't give a timetable for his return, but a fracture usually takes about a month to heal unless it requires surgery. If it requires surgery, then he may be out closer to 6 to 8 weeks. Bo Bichette, he missed today's game, with a fascia strain in his right calf, which means a right calf strain. He was on the IL for this earlier in June, which means that he re-aggravated injury he had, or he came back too soon from this injury. This is also something to watch that the Blue Jays may actually put him onto the IL just to give him some extra days off in the next couple of days. But that's also a guy who may be traded and may lose trade value just like Cody Bellinger could. Another guy who hasn't been mentioned in a while, I'm going to end with this, is Devin Williams. Devin Williams has been recovering from stress fractures since spring training. He's beginning a rehab assignment this weekend. He shouldn't need a big buildup because he's a reliever, and he could be returned to the Brewers bullpen, which means no more possible Trevor McGill saves. Devin Williams could return by the end of next week. I'm sorry.
Fred, last question I have for you is you mentioned Tanner Scott being traded. Is there any, let's call it, high-profile or number one type closer that you think is going to be traded that will lose their role?
No, I'd say Scott would probably, Scott doesn't fit that profile, although he's pitched really well. I think there's at least a chance if Scott got traded that he would keep it's possible, I guess he would keep a closer's role. No, I don't think, though, that we're going to see.
He got traded, by the way, and kept his role. His value would go up.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I don't think we're going to see one of those seasons where like Josh Hader will never get traded, but you know what I mean? Someone like that. I'm trying to quickly, like Kenley Jansen or something like that gets traded, yes, and then he's set up on another team, like because Boston's surged back. Like I don't think you'll see that. I don't think you'll see an Alexis Diaz get traded into a setup role on another team. I don't see that happening this year. It's your last injury. No, saddens me though, because on one team I have that's doing quite well, has really enjoyed the Trevor McGill experience, and he's been great. I don't know if you cut him immediately, but I probably watched Devin Williams get 2 saves, and then I need to cut McGill. But that'll be a sad day because if you got him all the way till basically the end of July or close to the end of July. That's pretty good.
Got your money's worth, right?
Absolutely. He's been better than I could have hoped for when I probably spent $5 FAB or $10 FAB on him out of 1,000 way back in April, but it's too bad that it's going to come to an end.
Yeah, well, I have Devin Williams in labor, so I'm saying the opposite. Thank God he's
Yeah. My only hope as a McGill owner is that maybe, I don't think it'll happen, but maybe they just, when Williams comes back, they'll be like, hey, we've got two guys who can close. Like, we'll mix and match, and, you know, they'll both get some saves down the stretch. And maybe since McGill's ratios are so good, I can get away with them. Anyways,
That's why you're going to wait the two save
it is. Right? I'm going to wait a couple weeks. Yeah, I want to see him go a couple weeks with 0 saves probably before I cut him.
Well, you also have to see how effective Devin Williams is coming back. You don't know how well he's going to come back, if he's going to be the same pitcher like he was before. So you do have to give that some time. You can't drop a closer, even if they trade for another closer, at least for 2-3 weeks, just to make sure that he's completely out of the job. Because if they trade for someone and that guy just flops, they're bringing back the closer they had before.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mason Miller, is that a guy that they're going to trade? I would bring him up as possible.
No, I don't think
I
so.
think no.
No? You think the A's will finally keep a closer?
No.
Well, at least for now.
You mentioned Kenley Jansen. I think he will get traded, and the one team I think that would want him would be the Dodgers. And Evan Phillips has not been his perfect self like he was last year.
I was going to ask that question. I was going to ask which current closer will lose the role when somebody gets traded to them. I guess Phillips is a possibility.
If Kenley Jansen, I think Kenley Jansen is the only closer that would go to LA and would actually be the closer above Evan Phillips. I think anyone else traded there maybe just be the setup guy.
That was the reason actually I mentioned Jason Adam when we were talking about closers was. The Rays think outside the box as much as any organization. If there are not elite relievers available, maybe they would trade Pete Fairbanks. I'm not saying it'll happen. Like, I don't think it will, but and Fairbanks hasn't been like amazing this year, but like overall in his time with the Rays, he's been quite good. Like, that was just a guy where I was like, I think the Rays more than any organization they'll listen on anybody. So if a team was looking to acquire someone with closing experience, a really good reliever, that was one of the ones I thought of.
Yeah, and Fairbanks is actually getting paid by the Rays, and the Rays generally don't like to pay closers, so they'd be happy to ship him and not pay. I own Jason Adam in every single league that I own Pete Fairbanks in.
Okay.
Even shallower leagues, I'm holding on to him because you just never know, either with injury with the trade. So I guess I'll wait to the deadline. If Fairbanks still in the team, I think it'll be time to cut Jason Adam. But let's see. All right. Well, this was a fantastic episode. So much strategy, so many good ideas and good thoughts. We knew this was going to be a great episode. And so thank you so much, Fred Zinkie, for coming on the show. And why don't you just tell everybody where we can read your work and listen to you and all things Fred Zinkie?
Yeah, so I try to make sure I connect people to my work via Twitter, like any article or podcast I put out. So that's at Fred Zinkie MLB. But anyways, you can find my articles 3 or 4 times a week on Yahoo, and I still do the Tuesday RotoWire podcast with Jeff Erickson.
Definitely a fantastic show. I am a religious listener, and you should be too. All the RotoWire stuff is really great, by the way. I mean, every day of the week has a unique flavor, by the way. Really, really great stuff. Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter, X, at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates as they come. You can also catch my weekly article on RotoBaller discussing all the injuries I mentioned, plus many more.
All right, I'm Ariel Cohen. You can find my work over at Fangraphs, over at RotoBaller. I'm on Twitter, X, at ATCNY. And, of course, we're on the Beat the Shift podcast, which you're currently listening to. All right, once again, thank you so much from Yahoo Sports, Fred Zinkie, for coming on the show. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, have a fantastic All-Star break, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.